The word for today is betrayal, because that is exactly how employees of PlayStation feel about Sony blindsiding them and going behind their back to ink a deal with their competitor, Microsoft, for future cloud gaming shenanigans. And you know what? Had to talk about it, so let's go. What's going on, guys? Randall Thor 19, the man with the million, back again with another video. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for future content. I greatly appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of you already know. We talked about this in a video last week. Sony and Microsoft announced a strategic partnership to co-develop game streaming technology and host some of PlayStation Online's services directly on the Azure cloud platform. I went into detail in that video about what I thought was going on, and you know what? I was completely surprised about Sony and Microsoft coming together. And you know who else was completely surprised, apparently? Well, the employees of PlayStation, as well as some of the employees from Xbox. Now, this article and all this information is taken from Bloomberg. I'll have it linked in the source below, as I always do. And man, a lot of people at PlayStation were just as surprised as we were, because quite frankly, maybe some of their jobs are on the line. Imagine working at PlayStation and you work in the PlayStation Now division, or maybe you're doing the cloud stuff on the back end. Maybe you work on PlayStation Network, and suddenly you hear that your parent company, Sony, has inked a deal with Microsoft and is going to be using their Azure cloud servers to basically host some of the stuff that you're working on. So either your job is about to become redundant, or you're going to have to learn a whole bunch of new technology that maybe you're not qualified for. So I could totally understand why some of these people were upset. Now, the article states, negotiations with Microsoft began last year and were handled directly by Sony's senior management in Tokyo, largely without the involvement of the PlayStation unit, according to people familiar with the matter. Staff at the gaming division were caught off guard by the news. Managers had to calm workers and assure them that plans for the company's next generation console weren't affected, said the people, asking not to be identified discussing private matters. That difficult moment is part of a painful lesson that Sony and many other technology companies are facing as the world's leading cloud computing providers become more powerful. If you aren't spending billions of dollars a year on data center servers and network gear, you can't keep up. Right, and we have a couple of choice quotes here in the article. And I quote, Sony feels threatened by this trend and the mighty Google and has decided to leave its network infrastructure build-up to Microsoft, said asymmetric advisors strategist Emir Andavrazara. I know I screwed up the last name on that one, I'm sorry. Why would they sleep with the enemy unless they feel threatened? So, basically, yeah, PlayStation division people were completely blindsided by this, like I mentioned a little bit earlier. Imagine if you work in the cloud gaming division at Sony, and suddenly now Microsoft was doing all the back-end stuff. You might be like, do I need to look for a new job? Should I update my resume? Now, of course, it says that PlayStation was largely not involved. Now, it doesn't say entirely not involved. So I would imagine key people within PlayStation, the top brass, people like Jim Ryan, maybe someone like Sean Layden, maybe someone like Mark Cerny, who's making, the PlayStation 5. I would probably make the guess that they were aware of negotiations between Microsoft and Sony. Same thing on the Xbox side. We also have an article here from Eurogamer that basically says Xbox employees were similarly completely unaware of the decision, which was planned at high levels within Microsoft. Now, I can imagine you're a low-level rank-and-file employee at Xbox. Information is classified. You got to sign NDAs, and if you're working on, Gears 5, you don't need to know that Sony and Microsoft are making this deal, right? It's basically a deal made at the tops of the company regarding the future. But I still would say someone like Phil Spencer perhaps someone like Mike Ybarra and key personnel at the very top of these companies knew. I know there's kind of talk going on that like this is Sony operating completely behind the backs of PlayStation, and you know, for years they've been considered like a siloed thing where they kind of, PlayStation's by itself and then Sony does their own thing, and Sony's done things without PlayStation's involvement for years. I would imagine key people knew what was going on, but the rank and file were probably completely caught unawares. Now, what does this exactly mean for you guys? Well, probably really nothing in the short term. This is an arrangement and a deal that probably more speaks to the future, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 15 years from now. They talk about how streaming tech here and revenue from that is only really 2% of gaming revenue, you know, projected up till 2023, which is 4 years from now, so not a big chunk of the market. This is just a play for the future. And a lot of these analysts, if you read this article, is basically saying that Sony is really threatened by Google, and they had to do something. And it wasn't Microsoft that was their first choice. In fact, it says here at the Bloomberg article that Sony was in negotiations with Amazon way before they were in negotiations with Microsoft, and eventually talks broke down. If you recall in my video where we talked about all this, I said the common thought was that Sony would go with Amazon. They already have a deal in place. A lot of PlayStation Network is on the back end of AWS. They're business partners, a lot of different things. So the common sense approach was that they're just going to sign up with Amazon. Amazon's going to do their PlayStation Now and cloud streaming tech. But that didn't happen. And it's a feather in the cap for Microsoft. Because the big winner here, according to a couple people, is Microsoft. Because if streaming takes off, it'll be Microsoft that wins. And here's the quote: Microsoft is the clear winner that Sony picked their technology even though they are a direct competitor in the gaming space, said DFC's Cole. Over the long term, some are warning Sony could be the loser. Currently, it charges publishers like Electronic Arts and Capcom up to 30% of sales made through PlayStation consoles. But if streaming takes off, it will have to compete against Microsoft while paying its rival for cloud access. That could leave Sony struggling to stand out both on a technical and pricing terms. And the quote continues, "This move raises some serious questions about its future dominance," said Andervergzark of Asymmetric Advisors. I screwed up that name again. I understand and I apologize. But it's pretty interesting. Nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw Microsoft and Sony getting in bed with each other. And there's rumors going around that, well, Microsoft and Nintendo are about to ink a very similar deal. And then you'll have the big three, Xbox, Nintendo, and PlayStation, all kind of essentially under the same umbrella, which would be Microsoft's cloud streaming tech, the Azure platform, versus good old Google. Google coming in, completely streaming. They're kind of the outsiders trying to get in. And Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo are looking to consolidate their power just in case streaming does take off. I mean, if it does take off and Google's the first one there, maybe people choose Google, and that kind of doesn't sit well with Sony or Nintendo or Xbox, quite frankly. But of course, Microsoft is probably, in my opinion, the winner in the long run. Not necessarily Xbox, because people need to separate the two. Xbox is a division within Microsoft, and then there's Microsoft, the parent company. They're probably the winner, as you know, Sony is basically going with them, saying they're the best. Rumors are Nintendo will do the same. And that probably will only lead for more and more people to choose Microsoft's streaming solution and not go with Google and not go with Amazon. So it just means more money in the pocket for Microsoft at the end of the day that they can choose to reinvest in better streaming tech and perhaps even more studios, better developers for their games division at Microsoft. So it seemed everybody was surprised, not only us. Alright guys, that is the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. Leave me a comment below about what you think about Sony going behind PlayStation's back and Microsoft going behind Xbox's back. to make this deal happen. I'm really interested in hearing you guys' thoughts. Share this out on social media. Tell a friend about the channel. I would love that. And if it was your first time here, if you just haven't subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you always want to be notified when I drop new content, hit that notification bell. Thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll see everybody in the next video. Later, guys.